Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane.
I'm Tom Henschel.
I'm Sonia. Together, we're unlocking leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It is a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunity. Our question today is from Josh in Flagstaff. If collaboration is supposed to be good for the business and the team, why do I feel burned out? Is it possible to overdo collaboration? Tom, have your clients experienced collaboration overload?
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I would say no,
Ah,
but who has not experienced overload? I don't necessarily conflate the two. I don't necessarily know that the overload and collaboration are causal
linked.
or
Okay.
relational at all. But here's what I'll do two quick things. Number one, I think collaboration has gotten harder for most teams. So it needs to be intentional. It takes more effort. It's often just kind of frustrating because it has many steps into it.
Mm,
It's easier. I mean, when we were all in person, which by the way, everybody was not always in person, right? People have been remote for a long time, but even so, now that everybody's remote, collaboration requires intentionality. It's
yes.
harder to do. So it takes more effort. So I would understand why somebody might be quote unquote, overloaded or right.
Mhm.
But here's a second thing. I keep hearing more and more evidence about our brains in this time of the world,
Mhm.
that there's been so much kind of stress
Mhm.
for so many months at a time. People are just tired. And
Yeah.
I think it's symptomatic societally and globally. We're seeing it in all different kinds of ways.
Mhm.
So I hear Josh and my heart aches for him. And I have heard this from my clients in many different ways. But I'm not certain that the collaboration is what's causing the burnout.
Okay.
I'm just not sure that it is. And Josh, I want to say, I'm sure the burnout's real,
Mhm.
but what if it weren't the collaboration? I mean, I don't know what the real issue is here. Like, are you maybe asking for collaboration tools to make collaboration go more easily? But I do think, Josh, I hope you have some compassion around being burned out. Who's not?
So I'm going to share a tool that might be helpful for him because it does go directly to what he said. And it's called Beyond Collaboration Overload by Rob Cross. And he's a gentleman that works with a particular foundation. He's been doing research for about 15 years. I heard him speak on an MIT conference. And the book was published by Harvard Business Press. And in it, he makes a couple of points that may address what Josh is bringing up. And that is that oftentimes we don't structure ourselves in a way that allows us to collaborate efficiently, if you will. So, are we really making sure that the right person's working on that and not everybody needs to be involved with that? So being able to identify what are so it requires delegation. It requires being able to be clear about what are the expectations, and then being able to allow people to engage in their part of the work independently and collaboratively as needed. So potentially you might find a few insights in that book because we are there. The work that we're all doing now requires operating with teams. There's very little work that's just one person. We all have to participate. We're all interdependent in some way. And so potentially understanding the interdependencies, because I think one of the things that happens in collaboration that we this requires some self-awareness and potentially some understanding, is we may have I think it's called FOMO, fear of missing out. So we ask to be included on every email or everything like that. And the higher that we are, that we're included in the email, people may think, well, we can't act on it until that person responds. So being able to recognize what are potentially some of our habits or approaches that may stand in the way of a more efficient collaborative process. And then the other one is being able to come up with an understanding of what is it that you want to accomplish as part of the collaboration? Because oftentimes, again, if you're going to collaborate, it should be something where like there's value add consistently, not a complete repeat, recycle. So food for thought.
Excellent. And I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I am love what you said, Sonia. There's a lot in there as far as choosing when to collaborate and choosing when you need to be working by yourself on the project at hand. Not everything needs to be collaborated. So making those decisions, I think, is very good. I'm going to disagree with you, Tom. I do think there's a little bit of a causal relationship here. I am certified in the Predictive Index, and the belief about the Predictive Index is we do best what we do naturally. And we are more engaged and productive at work when we are doing what follows our natural drives. So for instance, in your case, Josh, I'm going to ask a question. Do you have a natural drive to be more extroverted versus more introverted? Not meaning you like people less or more, but really what feeds you. So I can see where you're continually being pulled to collaborate in meetings on a project when you also need some alone time to do your own due diligence. As Sonia had mentioned, I could see you feeling burned out if that's a continual basis of how you're supposed to work in your role. Mm-hmm. Secondarily, I can also see some people have a natural drive to be more independent and more dominant in this situation. And some people have a natural ability to want to be more collaborative and talk things through and solve a problem together. So if you're on the other end where you are more independent in your problem solving, having to continually collaborate to solve a problem that you could probably feel that you could solve yourself could be very stressful, could lead to burnout. So there's benefits to collaborating. So I'm not saying you should always not be collaborating, but being sensitive when, as Sonia mentioned, it's adding value to the process and to your outcome and to the team's outcome and to the company's outcome, totally so, but also be aware where your limitations and boundaries are. And so, I deliver these behavioral assessments for individuals and leaders, and it helps them determine where they are at that spectrum from a social drive to a leadership drive to a dominance drive, similar to the MBTI as well, which I'm certified on. But I think it's a fun tool because it really drives down into what are your natural strengths and what are your natural drives. And when you can put people in their work environment and their work environment is activated by those natural drives, much more success. So I'm going to say it's possible you could be burned out. We all can be burned out, even if it is your natural drive, just because doing everything in a hybrid work environment as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It makes me think that Josh's frame of reference, just to ask the question, is it possible to overdo collaboration, is like, yeah, maybe that's how he's wired up, right? That it's going to feel exhausting to him. Yeah. So I wonder if this also gets to questions of self-care.
I was just going to go there. I think I agree with you.
Well, what are your ideas about it? Go ahead.
Well, my thought is, you've got to be able to check in with yourself so that you know when you're reaching a point that is overload, because I always say sort of like the last 15% of that, you are really not contributing in a large way personally in your individual life or professionally if you get yourself to the place where you're in overload. So if you understand, okay, so something that feeds me is being able to, spend time dinner with my family, and I haven't been able to do that in 3 weeks. Well, then you got to start carving out some time for that. Or I need to go to the gym more often, or I need to, bike with my friends. There's such a thing as being able to, I call it changing your channel. You need to know how to change your channel in small, medium, and large bursts so that you continually reinforce your energy pattern so that you can be your best whenever you're going to be involved in whatever you're going to be involved with. I think that today, with all the, I think potentially some of the things that Josh may be experiencing is people may feel like there's a bigger emphasis on understanding whether the person is productive or not. And so they don't want to miss out. If somebody says, well, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And everybody says, yes, yes, yes. And I think that one of the advice that I've given some leaders that end up having, that kind of a situation is you might want to let, if it's coming from your boss or wherever it's coming from, let them prioritize. Let them know, okay, so I've got, so you'd like to add this? Okay, so of these 4 things that you've given me as projects that all look interesting, I should be involved with most of them probably. But given that there's only 24 hours in the day or whatever, so let's prioritize. Which one would you like me to work on first? People often don't know that they actually have the right to do that. That's part of their self-care, is being able to recognize, how do I balance it out? And again, not let somebody else down in the process. So I think it involves being able to sort of keep a good, it's like whenever anybody tells me, I go, so what kind of a weekend did you have? And they go, well, we slept most of the weekend. I'm like, that means you were so exhausted, you couldn't have a weekend.
Right. Yeah, it is. I think it is about self-care. It's about self-awareness too, and knowing your limitations. So maybe you like a balance of extroversion, being extroverted and introverted. So you need that dedicated time where you can work by yourself. So maybe you put boundaries on your schedule where you only allow, maybe 3 hours out of the day to be any collaborative meeting, and the rest is where you've got your time to work in your own office, or you space it out throughout the day, or if you've had back-to-back meetings on one day, maybe try to split up, the next day or the following day and have some more time to yourself. So it's that self-care and self-awareness. So you know what your limitations are. So you are the happiest and most productive in your role. And I think that's ultimately where we all want to be when we're working, right?
Yeah, Kimberly, I mean, I'm so with you around this self-awareness piece. I am not an expert around neuroscience, but I am around a whole bunch of people who are. And so I hear it talked a lot about like what's happened in our brains and what the kind of prolonged effects are kind of for all of us as humans, just like what the hell's going on for 20 some months. So that we all are living with a need to be self-aware, as you say, Kimberly, around how am I doing and how is this showing up for me and what can I manage, and just recognizing that it's happening, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about from a neuroscience perspective. We've been living in the amygdala, so we've been like trying to get. So we've been in extreme survival mode. In extreme survival mode, I have a nephew that's in the military, and he gets to go out in the desert for 3 or 4 days on his own, doing things. And that requires a completely different kind of training and perspective and approach to growing one's own capabilities. But we were not given any of that training when we went into this deep, extreme survival mode. And so we have to, that's where I go, what changes your channel? Short-term, mid-term, long-term, because you're going to need to insert potentially more of these. And inserting them doesn't mean that you're not capable or you're not okay. It's that that you're running out of steam, you're running out of energy. One of the things that I find interesting with some executives who tend to have a lot of pressure in their jobs, and they're often having to do some work starting Sunday night, and they know that they have to do that to prepare for it. I happen to have gone to a particular football game that happened on a Sunday night. And so it was in the next day, it was in another state. So I was meeting with one of these executives the next day, and I said, oh, we went to that game, took my brother to that because, that's his team. And for the first time, his team was able to beat, at that time was when Tom Brady worked for the Patriots. And the executive goes, yeah, I was watching that game too. So you were actually there. And it was like he was doing his work, but he was also watching his game. It was a way to sort of balance himself out, to have a little bit of me time while he was doing that. And I thought, I'm so glad you're doing that, because we have to find something to balance us out.
And he definitely probably preferred being at the game, though, where you were at. Yes, for sure. But I think it's just as many, I think sometimes we always focus on what we like, as opposed to really thinking about what's our trigger? What's going to trigger you? Josh, is it sitting in 3 collaborative meetings back to back? And you can probably handle the 2, but the third one's going to send you over your edge. It's really knowing what's going to trigger you and where your limitations are, kind of going back to that self-awareness and self-care. So thank you, Josh from Flagstaff, for your questions today. We hope you, our viewers and listeners, gain new insights on how to practice collaboration that is energizing and productive. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership askthecoaches.com. We look forward to hearing and reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to one of our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today. Tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.